fascinated by your developinglabs.org, but I'd be interested to know, maybe people from disease endemic countries can raise their hands, whether they think this is a good idea and would they receive equipment that they think was appropriate and fit for purpose. Because you're not the first person to do this. Decades ago when I was at the London School, Professor Campbell used to ship lots of equipment. And I heard the problem was often the equipment required sophisticated and repeated repairs and so on, and therefore the equipment rapidly became obsolete. So there's kind of a comment for you to respond on that. And I don't know whether you can see from here a show of hands from my colleagues in developing countries, whether they would like to sign up to your interesting idea. You've got something.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The concept of this isn't new by any stretch of the imagination, and the equipment problem is always going to be a problem. But it's a problem if the concept is that you go out, you give somebody some equipment, and then you leave, and you just come back and you leave them to their own device. That's not what we're aiming to do here. What we aim to do is, it's really the training element of it is quite a strong side of it. So you bring out equipment, train people to use it, you build up a collaboration between that developing lab, the recipient developing lab, and the donor lab, and you're creating a network where there's ongoing research going on, which will, with it, bring a constant monitoring and evaluation of that initial equipment.
Could I just go back to you on that? So how's this being funded and costed? Do you have a charity set up?
Yeah, well, we've registered for charity stage, so we're very, very young. It's a very, very early project. We were registered as a charity. We have a series of donors. We have had donations, mainly of equipment to date. We've had volunteers volunteering their time, and for example, a couple of the university projects in Ecuador, they're being funded by National Geographic. So we've got a range of different small incomes coming in, but yeah, that's one of the reasons I'm here today, is to actually urge people to not just incorporate giving equipment, but to really get behind this so that we could start putting together larger grants to Gates Foundation, to some of the bigger philanthropic agencies.
Well, it's an excellent idea, and I will go to your website.
May I add one small comment on that? I think this is a brilliant opportunity in many ways. As an academic, I'll probably get wrapped on my hand for saying this. I think we've become lazy in the West with regards to our understanding of the fundamentals of technologies that we have every day in our lab. I mean, I still get people at postdoc level not understanding the difference between RPM and RCF or Gs on a centrifuge. Yet at the same time, we have all these communities of highly ingenious people, very inventive, which have the opportunity to take all these technologies and really learn from bottom up how to maintain them, how to reinvent these technologies and make them fit for purpose for what they need. And I think this is what this kind of initiatives can provide. The capacity, the materials by which this reinvention, there is complete revolution of development can happen by the people themselves. I think it's the best possible helping hand we can give.
I think just on that, the entire EM lab, which has been responsible for so many of the results that you see in your WHO sit reps, that entire lab can run off a car battery. It's been designed to work off very simple mechanisms. We've made it as simple as possible. We don't want the fancy facts analysis. We don't want an NG, well, we do want an NGS, but who doesn't? But we don't want the fancy equipment. We just want the basic equipment that we can train people to use to do a simple task, which is positive, negative, or build a simple research project that can then lead on to other things.
Alan just raised. Many a time you realize that equipments are shipped to African labs, and then we do not really find effective use for them. I think the problem mainly has to do with the need assessment of that particular lab. I feel that in going forward, if you really want to sustain and then to make an effective use of equipment that are sent to West African labs or African labs or developing country labs, first of all, there has to be the need assessment of that particular lab. Do they even need that lab, those equipment? If they do, how can they be maintained? Are they given training on, simple management of such instruments? You realize that, in developing countries, when it comes to research, access to research materials are many, but then the only barrier has to do with the technology and then the expertise, which abounds in Europe. I believe that's the main reason why most funding agencies would request that there has to be North-South collaboration. So those instruments and equipment coming to Africa is so good, but I think if you want to sustain the efficiency or the effective use of these instruments, there has to be the need assessment and then some after donation training, so that it could be trainer of trainers or trainees sort of, so that understanding of the basic functioning of the equipment could be made known to the users, so they could have the use they need out of it. Thank you.
I think you're absolutely right. You have to assess the needs, and we do. And the way we do it is we have our network. I think I said earlier, there's 86 people in the network at the moment. That's 86 people who've sent us a shopping list, essentially, saying, we want all of this. So we followed that up with, what research would you do? What research have you done? And a series of pointed questions that really sort of begin to sort of split those numbers up. Then we can then follow that up through, if they have any publications, going through and seeing what their areas of expertise are. Other criteria are, would you need to fund a small regional lab if it's right next to a massive university lab? Probably not. So it's a learning process where we're looking at really finding where the need is most and what will be gained from receiving the training, which, like I said at the beginning, for me is actually more important than the equipment itself.
Right, and if you permit me, let me just add up a follow-up question to what you just presented. I am currently in a university, which is a government university. It's a new university, barely 3 years old, but basically all staff, about 80% of us PhDs, were poached from the traditional government universities. We have built labs with no equipment, and it's quite worrying. So sometimes you have a PhD in microbiology, and then you know all these molecular biology techniques, but then you do not have the equipment. So I personally will be seeing you after this conference to see how best you could be of help to such an institution, because I believe, having put together such high human resource, most of them trained outside, and then to sit in a government university, having an empty lab with no equipment, while other equipment might be sitting somewhere not being used, I think, it might be appreciated. So probably I will personally see you after the conference and see how I can help. Thank you.
Thank you for your nice presentations. I wonder how much electricity could be a problem in establishing new laboratories able to make an efficient diagnostic phase. So I acknowledge that there are so many, that the area is so spread that you cannot provide a complete diagnostic furniture for every center. But can you make use of some technology like fuel cells, for example? They can provide energy and purify water with just solar energy, and you can maintain a small hospital with that. So even more, you can sustain more than one laboratory. Is it feasible to think about some intelligent location for a laboratory with expertise and just try to cover part of the territory with some installment like fuel cells, for example? Or how could you, what is your policy for spreading the diagnostic tests all across the territory when it is so spread?
Would you like either of us to take this question, or both of us?
Whoever has any.
Well, I'll start. So, I mean, our system is effectively designed to go wherever it needs to go. If it needs to go to a village that doesn't have any power on the back of a 4x4, it will run off that 4x4's alternator. So even if you're running out of gas and you can't use the alternator, it still has its own battery, so it can run it its own if necessary. That's the purpose of this instrument. Now, one instrument is not going to cater an entire diagnostic suite. That's true. I fully recognize that. But this is where efforts like the EM Lab come in. And we have seen, I don't know if you've looked at the incidence numbers. Between December and January, we had this. An epidemiologist spoke to me in January, said there's something wrong, we're missing something, the virus has mutated away or something, and that's why we're not measuring the cases appropriately. But no, it was actually the effort of the EM Lab and people like Chris who went out there in labs that run off a car battery and offered what was needed in the field. So my view is that technology is moving in the right direction, be it our system, be it other systems, other solutions, to offer what is necessary. And I would hazard to say this is technology that's useful for you guys as well to do your own research wherever you need to do it.
I'll add to that when in Guinea there were two things you noticed. One, getting a bucket was the easiest thing in the world. You could get a bucket anywhere. But also, generators were everywhere. Everybody, as you were showing earlier, there wasn't mains electricity, but that didn't stop normal life because everybody either shared a generator or there's communal generators, so everything just worked off carbon fuels. I think while I would love all of these efforts to work off a renewable energy source and to be able to solve that problem, I think when you look at the hierarchy of problems, it's probably not high up on that actual list for in the immediate. But I think it would be wonderful if in the next time there's a conference like this for somebody to come up and talk about how the entire development of their diagnostic assay was done using renewable energy and how it's being used in communities that don't necessarily need to be plugged into a mains. Your equipment seems to already have taken that first step, which is great.
We saw the assured principles and we thought, okay, we need to figure out how to do this on solar power, so we're doing it.
Yeah.